Oi, up here. You're probably wondering how I got up here. I'm definitely not stuck. I am wholeheartedly vibing, just relaxing, taking in the midnight sun, so to speak. It's free, it's liberating, right? I could ask you the same thing. Why are you even out here? What are you looking for? You know what? Let me answer that for you. I have a story here that you might actually enjoy. Come on up, if you can, climb this tree, be careful, take your time, but let me tell you about the beauty of the nighttime. Sound good? Let's go. Call of the Night is a vampire manga, but it's anything like the traditional vampire stories that you would normally think of. This is a good thing. We follow a young boy called Ko, who is having a bit of an identity crisis. He's a high achiever at school and genuinely gets along with a lot of people and somewhat popular, but he doesn't feel like himself. He doesn't feel like this is his place, his home, that he's needed, that he even cares or wants to be around any individual. He's lost. He has no redeemable meaning for himself, and this has sparked a bit of a confliction inside of him. So naturally he wants to fulfill this. He wants to figure out what he's missing, what he wants to be, what he wants to do, and understand his own identity further. Something would evidently allure him to the nighttime, the freedom of it, the liberation, the unknown that seeps within every single dark alleyway and corner. It called to him, and he fell in love with it. So much so that he would stop going to school. He would stop contacting his friends and family and quite literally just walk around the streets at nighttime. It sounds dangerous and rebellious, but he felt comfortable. He felt at home. He felt free. During his escapades, he would come across a young woman known as Nazuna. Very brash, very obnoxious, humorous individual that too felt liberated by the nighttime, but for a different reason, because she's a vampire. These two would hit it off pretty well. They would find a common connection within the nighttime of the streets and play around. They'd have fun, they'd go on adventures, they'd explore different avenues that they've never seen before and really soak in this brand new lifestyle that Ko is becoming accustomed to. He would come to find out that Nazuna is a vampire, but he wouldn't be turned off. He wouldn't be disappointed or even scared. He would be intrigued. He would be understanding. He would even be somewhat jealous that this creature of the night, being so free and liberated from all sorts of responsibilities, is something that he wants, something that he seeks. And through a hurdle of decisions and incomprehensible situations, he too decided to want to be a vampire. Unfortunately for him, however, becoming one isn't that simple. There's rules, there's guidelines, there's specific requirements that have to be met. Nazuna would agree to turn him. However, it'd be up to Ko to make that first requirement, and one of the biggest that he would have to face throughout the whole story. He'd have to fall in love. See, the only way that you can turn into a vampire within Call of the Night, the human has to be in love with the vampire, wholeheartedly, naturally, head over heels. Sounds simple enough, right? Once this requirement is met, Nazuna can quite easily turn Ko into a vampire, which is what he wants, but unfortunately, because Ko has never experienced love, nor does he really understand himself, his wants, his likes, his dislikes, he's conflicted, he's confused, he does not understand the meaning or purpose of love. This is where our story would begin, with not only Ko trying to understand love, but also fall in love at the same time with Nazuna, as they indulge within the city life at night and all of the interesting components and aspects that accompany it. Considering where we are, sitting up in this tree, it's a pretty relatable story, right? Now, unfortunately, it's kind of difficult to climb back down. I should have mentioned that prior to you coming up here, but this is good because now you can hear my thoughts on what this story actually is. This manga surprised me in a lot of ways. I enjoy the vampire concept. I think it's very interesting. I think there's a lot of ways that you can build upon it, but traditionally, however, it barely ever explores new or unique avenues. There's a lot of reasons for that, but when it comes down to business, people love and appreciate the old school classics. So if it's not broke, you don't have to technically fix it. However, it does get boring, seeing the same kind of traditional vampire concept reused over and over again without much deviation. This manga, however, does something a little bit different. It doesn't necessarily focus on the vampires per se. It's not the main appeal, it's not the core or heart of the story, but it completely boils down to identity and purpose. And when you mix the identity of vampires, the identity of humans, and one trying to become the other, and fully just exploring that avenue mentally, emotionally, and even physically, you end up with building a very compelling story. One that has so many lovable characters, so many twists and turns, and just overall an enjoyable, beautiful experience from start to finish. I know as of recently, this story has been gaining a lot more traction, which is originally why it pinged on my radar. I believe it got an anime this year, which I heard was pretty good, but also I kept hearing more and more about the manga, so I decided to check it out. And and it was worth every aspect of my time. To be honest, I actually binge read it. I was so infatuated with Ko's story and trying to find himself and to understand himself further than what he ever could before. This conflict that was building within himself, pushing him to become a vampire, the alluring nature of nighttime activity and just being himself was liberating, was freeing. It coupled perfectly with the vampiric concept and characters with supernatural abilities. Yes, they're strong, they're fast, they suck blood, but it's only there to enhance everything else. Ko's want to be a vampire isn't fueled by the fact that he would be superhuman or immortal or have speed and strength like no other, but instead it gives a different perspective on his original purpose, which is loving the nighttime and utilizing it to its fullest, which is what vampires are known for. They operate within the nighttime. He connected those two things together and felt like it was the perfect pairing, but this isn't without any implication. He does get challenged. He does get questioned, both morally and ethically. He gets pushed and confused down so many different avenues when it comes to the lingering friends and them trying to understand his position. It's not like he faces constant hardship. It's not like he has these massive hurdles or problems that are impeding his everyday life, but he's just not happy. He's not fulfilled. He has no want or drive to continue down this life of normalcy. Instead, he wants the complete opposite, which is why he seeks Nazuna, who is someone that quite literally is the complete opposite to him, but matches with him perfectly, both mentally, emotionally, and how they build and learn about each other is endlessly gorgeous. See, Ko works really well because of Nazuna, who is our vampire main character, and the one that Ko has to fall in love with. And she's not the easiest person to do that with. She's very obnoxious. She's very outgoing, very energetic, very chaotic and all over the place, but she has this subtle side to herself that no one ever really sees. She has this tragic backstory that has become lost with time. So even though Nazuna and Ko share the same infliction within different aspects, they come together and complete each other in pretty great ways. They both show each other new aspects on life, on people, on humans and vampires coexisting, and the world gets opened up very quickly. There's more to vampires than you would think. There's more to how they operate within the world, how they perceive humans, and how they're kind of just the next step for it. They're not this monstrous, hideous being that goes out slaughtering people. If anything, they are a reflection of humans themselves. And the story makes it very clear that there's always going to be bad apples within both categories. Vampires may be deemed as monsters, yet they're just as human as anyone else. They're not emotionally void. And I find it rather poetic in a way that Ko, who it doesn't really see himself as being human or even wants to be human, is kind of the best example and bridge between both worlds. So you have an incredibly grounded and introspective story with beautiful main characters, beautiful side characters, and the world just inhibiting this complete understanding of oneself. What's not to love? It looks absolutely stunning in every single aspect, and it's kind of the complete package that is a vampire story but isn't one at the same time. It's a romance. It's an introspective telling of oneself and finding out who they are, how they operate within the world, and what they want to achieve while they're within it. This is also quite a hefty story. It has about 130, 140 odd chapters, I believe, and it's going to take you a little bit to get through it, but I promise you it is well worth the read. Even though there's quite a bit of dialogue, and even though the beginning of the story is a little bit shaky and doesn't really have much direction, it starts to clean itself up over time. It starts to have a solid direction. It starts to merge and bleed arcs into one another and really sets itself a solid foundation. See, the beginning is probably the shakiest because it spends a lot of time building our main character's identity, but it takes a little bit too long to actually achieve it. You kind of get the full main picture by the 5th or 6th chapter. However, this is dragged out and extrapolated further to really bring it home for 20 in total. However, if you're able to hang on, once you get past those first 20 chapters, it starts to bridge in much more compelling and grandeur narrative arcs, character arcs, and really pushes things forward in a very intuitive way. It does a great job actually at doing it. Overall, I think this is a beautiful story for anyone to read, and even more so if you're a fan of the vampiric concept or if you're looking for a romance story. It is these things, but it is so much more. The characters are so incredibly lovable, likable, beautifully drawn and conceptualized, and feel so lively. They have so much prowess within their characteristics, and how they maneuver within the world is so identifiable. And this is a very powerful thing to have. Having your cast of characters feel so incredibly unique and alive is nothing but brilliant, and you can fall so deeply in love with that. Ko is an excellent example of someone with such a simple goal that can twist and turn itself into something so complex, never ending, never finding the answers that one would want. And this builds such a beautiful character development and growth over those 130, 140 plus chapters. It's not just him. The others may not get the same amount of attention, but it's still just as valuable and enjoyable. I definitely needed this story. It was a great change of pace. It feels entirely unique and honestly just a super fun experience. I couldn't be more happier that I finally took the chance and dived into it. And I believe you will too. Alright, we've been sitting up here long enough. I think it's time that I take my leave. Hopefully, what I've talked about has sparked your interest and you might go check it out. Now you're going to watch me perform a very incredible magic trick and fly off this tree. I take my leave. Goodbye.